So over the last week, I've been doing a deep dive into just what does it take to become a really competent climber. And in this recording, I'm going to take you through what I've discovered. Hi, if we haven't met before, my name's Andy. I'm the creator of the Fish Scales project. The idea is that I am now in my mid-50s. I've had 13 years away from the climbing wall, and I'm looking to figure out how good can I get and what will it take to become the best climber I can possibly be. And I really appreciate you taking the time to join me for today's episode. So something I've realized early on in this project is that if I want to realize my potential on the wall, then my training needs to be intentional. In the past, I've climbed because it's been something I've enjoyed doing, and I haven't looked to extend my ability beyond what naturally happens from spending time on the wall. And if you talk to a lot of people, they'll tell you the way to get good at climbing is to spend more time climbing, and there's some truth in that. But the more you delve into the climbing scene and research elite climbers, the more you realize that maximum gains can only be achieved if you've got certain attributes that you're looking to develop. So from the research I've conducted this week, I've identified 5 key areas that I want to focus on. The first is physical capability. Do I have the level of fitness and the kind of fitness necessary to perform at my optimum on the wall? The second is movement skills. Am I able to execute moves so that I can go from one hold to the next as efficiently as possible? Third is mindset, which I think is very important in any physical pursuit, but particularly important for climbing. Fourth is the prevention of injury and, if necessary, rehabilitation from injury, which in my particular case, as a guy in his mid-50s, I think it's going to be important. I have a series of tweaks and previous injuries that I'm managing from my earlier misadventures as a young man, so I'm going to have to work around those. And then finally is some form of evaluation, so I can identify whether I am progressing, at what rate am I progressing, and how can I optimize my progress. So why don't we begin by taking a little bit of a closer look at the attributes that I think are important for physical capabilities. So I've made a few notes here which I'm just going to look at as I go along. But in terms of physical ability, the first thing that I've noticed amongst excellent climbers is mobility and flexibility. And I'm reasonably mobile and flexible already because of my background in martial arts, but there are specific kinds of flexibility suited to climbing that I want to be able to develop and improve on. The second attribute is all about pulling power, both static and dynamic. Much of the physical work on the climbing wall involves pulling yourself in various directions, but ideally upwards. Now, because there's such an emphasis on pulling, I also need to make sure that in my broader training, I'm addressing the antagonistic muscles, the push muscles, so that my body doesn't become imbalanced and I become more prone to injury. So I'm going to incorporate that into my broader training. Then we have all-important finger strength. This is probably the area where I know that I need to place most attention in terms of physical development, because it's just something that I haven't had to have particularly strong fingers for what I've been doing up to now. So I've already begun that process. I've got hold of a fingerboard and a couple of training aids which I'll share with you in future episodes. But I'm having to do this very gradually, because the last thing I want to do is create a pulley injury or something that's going to set me back weeks or months. Then we have core conditioning, the ability for the body to be able to stabilize from the core. This is particularly important when you're climbing and you have a break away from the wall and you've got to re-engage your feet, or just holding yourself in awkward positions for extended periods. I think that a weak core is at the heart of many of the problems I've been running into in climbing so far. So it's not much fun, but I'm going to have to be working on those abs. And finally, we have endurance. Now, bouldering, as I'm doing it at the moment, I'm only climbing up to 4.5 or 5 meters, but I'm putting quite a lot of volume in over time. And so I want to make sure that my muscles, my ligaments and tendons are able to endure being put in under duress for extended periods of time. When it comes to movement skills, there are three key areas that I want to focus on. And the first is body positioning. Having a better understanding of the physics behind good climbing, what it is that's going to cause me to barn door or peel away from the wall or be unable to hold my position, and then apply that practically in my climbing. The next one's footwork, which I've identified already as a particular area of weakness. So becoming more skillful and competent in the ways in which we can engage our feet. It's really easy as a beginner, I think, to place too much emphasis on the arms and the upper body, particularly as a guy, where strength is the thing we default to. But some of the best climbers I've seen at Highball, where I climb here in Norwich, are women, and petite women. But their climbing's superb because they've had to learn technique rather than use their muscles to get themselves up the wall. And then the last movement skill I want to be working on is balance and coordination. This is particularly true, I've noticed, with dynamic climbing, when the ability to move fluidly from one hold to the next whilst maintaining balance on slab work or dynos and all of those kind of things requires a really nuanced set of physical skills that I want to develop. Now, in terms of mindset, I was initially a little dismissive of this, thinking that the primary issue around climbing and mindset is fear. And I'm not particularly afraid of heights or of falling. Perhaps I should be more afraid, but I'm not. So it would be easy to think that this is something that I can put to one side, but actually there's so much more. And I've been watching lots of really impressive climbing videos this week, including Free Solo, which is just extraordinary, Alex Honnold's ascent of El Capitan. I've watched some Olympic hopefuls preparing for the first Olympic Games that included climbing. The more that I've researched and thought about this, the more I've realised that there's a lot more to climbing and mindset. We've got the ability to hold concentration and focus, the ability to not become disheartened when you fail on a route, because the majority of climbing is, if you're climbing at your limit, is going to be failing. So I think there's a lot more to climbing and mindset than I currently am aware of, and so I want to do due diligence and give appropriate amounts of attention to this, what I suspect is going to be a critical aspect of my training. Now, when it comes to injury prevention and injury management, it would be easier to think that the answer to this is just don't get hurt. But I think it's inevitable that if you climb often enough, long enough, and if you're old enough, then the chances are you're going to get hurt at some point. And so I can minimize that by paying attention to certain things. So sleep is all important, of course. And once term begins again, it's very easy not to get the amount of sleep I should be having. So I need to pay attention to that. Good nutrition. I've already mentioned on the first video that I created for this channel that I think I've got a few pounds to lose if I'm going to be able to optimize my performance on the climbing wall. Hydration as well. It's very easy to be dehydrated and perform suboptimally because of that. Then there's stress management. Life's pretty stressy as a school teacher. Not right now because I'm on the summer holidays, but usually I'm working long hours. And if I'm going to fit my training in and keep a sense of humor and be a good dad and all of those things, then I need to make sure that I'm paying attention to the strategies I have for managing my stress so that it doesn't have a negative impact on my performance on the wall, in the classroom, or in my home. The final element of the Fish Scales project that I think needs time and attention is this idea of evaluation. How am I going to be able to measure the progress that I'm making, and what level of progress is appropriate for someone of my age, my ability, and the amount of time that I'll have to invest in this process. This might mean that I get involved in some sort of coaching so that I can have objectivity in my process, and then comparing videos from previous weeks or months to see whether I am improving. Now, the climbing wall that I attend, Highball in Norwich, has a grading system from 1 to 7, and I currently climb 2s, 3s comfortably. Some 3s I fail at, and I've done 2 4s, I think. But it goes all the way up to 7. So Is it reasonable to expect that I should be climbing 7s this time next year? I don't know, but I'm going to be excited to find out. So now we've considered the key attributes that I think make for an excellent climber. The question is, how do I apply all of this? At the moment, whilst I'm on school holidays, this is pretty straightforward because most of the time is my own. So I've put together a training plan which is ambitious, and I recognise that it's going to probably need some modification once I go back to full-time work again. But for now, I'm going to have a 7-day-a-week training program, but it's going to be periodised, and the workouts are going to be arranged in such a way that I shouldn't overtrain any particular body part. So on the odd days, so that's days 1, 3 and 5, I'm going to be doing conditioning work. Now that might be just some cardiovascular training and some antagonistic muscle drills. It might be that I'm paying particular attention to my zone 4, zone 5. I'm going to keep it fairly open-ended, but it's going to be off-the-wall training. Then days 2, 4 and 6 are going to be on the wall. One of those days, I think I've scheduled it for day 2 from memory, is going to also involve some fingerboard work at the end of the session. Day 4 is going to involve some pull-ups at the end of the session. And then day 6 is going to be a longer climb, because that's probably going to be the weekend climb when my son will be with me. And I'm going to be looking to push the limit on those sessions. So the end of the week climbing sessions where I'll see if I can climb to my capacity and maybe try and break new routes. And then that leaves the last day, 7, where I'm just going to do another pull-up routine and some fingerboard drills, but nothing too taxing. It's going to be an active recovery day primarily. Time to be spent on those climbing wall days, 1.5 to 2 hours, and that will include a warm-up, some climbing drills. It's not going to be going hard at it, because one of the things I've found in the last couple of weeks as I've returned to climbing is that I just don't have the conditioning yet to be able to push hard for multiple hours, which is what I did, and I'm paying the price a little bit. I'm still sore now from the last session, which was 4 days ago now. So that's the plan. It's probably ambitious, and it's going to require me to have some flexibility to be able to modify as needed so that I can make it work around my other commitments. But I've got to start somewhere, and you may as well aim high. Any comments, please do feel free to leave them in the comment section. I'm aware that there'll be far more experienced climbers who are watching this video, and I'm very open to suggestions on ways in which you think I might need to modify this, or attributes that I've missed that you think are vital for me to be able to grow as a climber. As I've said previously, I'm aware that we've got a lot of demands on our time, and if you've spent the time watching this video, then I really appreciate you. So thank you very much, and I hope to have something else to share again with you soon.